Whereas the Georgia State Conference NACP supports the importance of charter schools and its positive impact on the development of the physical growth and development of our children in the public schools of Georgia, and that the State Conference NACP maintains its full support of public schools in the state of Georgia. And whereas the Georgia State Conference NACP opposes the provisions in HB 1162 authorizing the use of state funds for the support and maintenance of, and I quote, end quote, special schools, defined in the current Georgia law as charter schools without the approval of local school boards. And whereas the Georgia State Conference NACP believes that using taxpayers' revenue to fund charter schools will have a negative impact on the current QBE Quality-Based Education Act funding that's already inadequate among Georgia public schools. And whereas the Georgia State Superintendent John Barnes, a Republican, moved away from his party to oppose this piece of dangerous legislation and said that controlled charter schools will cost taxpayers an additional $430 million in state funds, and that Georgia has already cut nearly $4 billion for education over the last years. And be it resolved that the Georgia Supreme Court struck down the state's attempt to create charter schools without local input, and that our justices knew local parents and taxpayers, not bureaucrats in Atlanta, should not be making these decisions for our children, thus making it clear that they don't favor having dual systems in Georgia. And be it therefore resolved that the Georgia State Conference NACP during its 70th Annual State Convention held in Marietta, Georgia, requests that all delegates, as we are doing, urge voters in our community across Georgia to vote no on the constitutional amendment on the ballot number 1 during the General Assembly on November 6th. Be it further resolved that all units across the Georgia Association acknowledge the importance of taking a stand, and I repeat, take a stand against this unconstitutional partisan piece of legislation that will eventually cause more financial woes for public schools and our children in the state. And be it finally resolved that the Georgia State Conference NACP and its units educate their given communities on the negative impact of this amendment will have in the public schools of Georgia, and that this amendment is not about fixing the schools and school systems, but is designed to decide who gets to spend our hard-earned tax dollars for, and I quote, end quote, special schools, which are not under the control of local school boards. And that a copy of this resolution is written in the minutes of the 7th Annual Georgia State Conference NACP Convention held in Marietta, Georgia, October the 13th, and that a copy be maintained on the records for each unit of the delegates attending the event. This resolution was unanimously voted upon by every delegate who attended the convention in opposition of the constitutional amendment on the election ballot. It's signed by Edward Oscar Dubose, a member of the National Board of Directors, President of the Georgia State Conference NACP, Townsend Thomas, State Secretary, yours truly, Charles Smith, Chairman of the Georgia State Conference Resolution Committee. Bureau is the President of the Richmond County Retired Educators Association, Ms. Pat Bureau.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. And again, as Dr. Smith indicated, I do represent our retired educators. I see a few of them in the room with us, and we're glad to see them. I sent out 565 mailers today to our association. Our purpose is to educate voters about the truth of this amendment. But let me read how the ballot begins. And this is going to be printed. It is printed. I have a friend who early voted today. It starts off by saying this: provides for improving student achievement and parental involvement through more public charter school options. What individual would not want to improve student achievement and provide more parent involvement? We all do. But that's not the truth of what's going on here. Then, as you've already heard read, I will not repeat it, it asks about the Constitution being amended to allow state or local approval of public charter schools upon the request of local communities. We started this for fear of folks not having the whole story, lacking the education. I say we, our local chapter of Richmond County Retired Educators Association voted unanimously at our meeting to get out there and try to inform individuals what was going on. That was our purpose. 60th percentile to 86%, number 1 in the state, was under the leadership of former principal and then principal Dr. Wayne Fraser. Let's give them a hand. That resolution passed unanimous in Marietta yesterday. Lucy Lane High School had a graduation rate of 30
9.4% and improved, not reaching 80th percentile, but they came up from 39.4 up to 71.4%, and they were also acknowledged for progress by way of a resolution by the NACP Augusta branch and was unanimously approved. Also, T.W. Josie Comprehensive High School met the benchmark to reach the 80th percentile and was one of the 40 schools in the state who was struggling to come up to 80%. And let's give Dr. Ronald Wiggins and T.W. Jones and all three schools, come on, you can do better than that. Because we have proponents around the state that constantly want to belittle and talk down Richmond County public schools. But all schools are struggling academically at some place, somewhere throughout this state, throughout this country. But we ought to embrace public education. We ought to empower and encourage our teachers and nurture our young people to grow, to develop. And if the State Department continue to pump $2 million into our schools per year, all of these schools with academic graduation rates can achieve success. So let's again give them a big round of applause.
A production of Anibal Ibarra.
AnibalShow.com.
AnibalShow.com.